Minister of State, Independent Charge, Ministry of Culture and Ministry of Tourism, Sri Prahlad Singh Patel. Minister of State, Independent Charge, Ministry of Youth Affairs and Sports, and Minister of State, Ministry of Minority Affairs, Sri Kiren Rijiju. Ambassador of Mongolia to India, His Excellency Mr. Ganching Ganbold. Member of Parliament and President, Indian Council for Cultural Relations, Dr. Vinay Sahasrabuddhe. Secretary General, International Buddhist Conference, Sri Dhammapriya. Secretary Culture, Sri Anand Kumar. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I extend my heartiest greetings to all of you on this auspicious occasion of Dhammachakra Divas and Ashadh Purnima. It was today on Ashadh Purnima, some 2500 years ago, that the word of wisdom was spoken out for the first time. On attaining enlightenment, the Buddha spent 5 weeks in a state beyond description. Then he started sharing with people the nectar he had discovered. It was in the Deer Park in Sarnath, near Varanasi, the ancient city in the eastern part of India, that the Buddha taught the Dhamma to his 5 original disciples. It was a momentous occasion unparalleled in the history of humankind. That day is also known as Guru Purnima. Hindus and Jains also celebrate it as a mark of reverence for their spiritual teachers. This day is an unbroken link to India's eternal pursuit of wisdom without dogma. I am happy to host the Ashadh Purnima celebration in the Rashtrapati Bhavan as part of our civilizational journey for welfare of the universe since time immemorial. The video message by the Prime Minister of India seen by all of us just now reflects the eternal values and positive approach of India. I am delighted at the very enriching message from the President of Mongolia, His Excellency Khaltmaagin Batulg, read out by His Excellency Mongolian Ambassador. I had the privilege to host the President of Mongolia as our honored guest in Rashtrapati Bhavan during his state visit in September last year. It was an occasion for us to deepen our civilizational friendship and to nourish our age-old Buddhist ties. Ladies and gentlemen, I am told that the International Buddhist Confederation, or IBC, with its presence in 36 countries, is holding the celebrations around the world. We, however, are in the midst of a virulent pandemic that has overwhelmed the entire humanity. Perhaps no part of the world remains untouched by this calamity that adversely affects every individual. As a precaution, we have to follow certain discipline and maintain physical distance. The IBC is therefore holding the events virtually. I believe that such an effort is praiseworthy because this makes it possible for a far larger number of people from all corners of the world to participate in them. Ceremonies and prayers are being organized at the sacred sites in Sarnath and Bodh Gaya in India, Kandy in Sri Lanka, and Gandan Tekchig Ling Monastery in Mongolia. Chanting of the Dhammachakra Pravartan Sutra by the Mahasangha in various countries is being streamed live. Friends, let us remind ourselves that the Buddha's first sermon was disarmingly simple. That sermon, known as Dhammachakra Pavattan Sutra in Pali, has a unique place in the Buddhist canon. Both practitioners and scholars revere it as the treasure in which the entire teaching is hidden. For 45 years after he attained enlightenment, the Buddha traveled across the vast regions of the Gangetic Plains to bring the healing message to the masses. Thus, he delivered a very large number of discourses, yet all of them, arguably, offered only variations and extensions of the key themes summarized in the first sermon. Ironically, the Buddha's teaching was against the current during those times. But the force of his argument was women around love, compassion and non-violence. The spread of Buddhism around the world was guided by these eternal values. In his lifetime, he always sought to convince people through his logical and moral arguments. For the Buddha always held that to force oneself to believe and accept a thing without understanding is political and not spiritual or intellectual. This is the precise reason that in his first sermon, the Buddha advises the 5 original disciples to shun the extreme methods and prefer the middle path, that is Madhyam Marg. Then he speaks of the ultimate reality as given in the 4 noble truths, which are: first, dukkha or suffering; second, samudaya, the arising or origin of dukkha; third, nirodha, the cessation of dukkha; and fourth, magga, the way leading to the cessation of dukkha. As summation of the human condition as well as human potential, these 4 pithy lines are unmatched in any tradition, spiritual or literary, in entire history. After the diagnosis of our ailment, the Buddha prescribes the medicine also, which is the noble 8-fold path to enlightenment known as the Ashtanga Marg. It is a complete and perfect way of life. The 8 steps are: right view, right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. In conclusion, the Buddha proclaims, I quote, "And a vision of true knowledge arose in me thus: my heart's deliverance is unassailable. This is the last birth. Now there is no more birth," unquote. Thus, the Dhammachakra, the wheel of truth, was set in motion. Ever since, it has been the lodestar, helping spiritual seekers navigate through the maze of worldly life and arrive at the end of suffering here and now. It is so scientific that it resembles psychotherapy more than a traditional dogmatic religion. It is this open attitude of inquiry into the heart of existence and the possibility of finding the key to eternal serenity that has attracted seekers in every age for the last 2500 years. The wheel has come full circle, and the word of Dhamma has in the recent decades spread to distant shores in the West too. Dear seekers, India is proud of being the land of the origin of the Dhamma. It was from India that it began to spread in neighboring regions. There, in new fertile soil and new climate, it grew organically, eventually branching off into various offshoots. In India, we see Buddhism as a fresh expression of the sublime truth. His enlightenment and the subsequent preaching by him for over 4 decades were in line with India's tradition of respect for intellectual liberalism and spiritual diversity. In modern times, 2 exceptionally great Indians, Mahatma Gandhi and Baba Sahib Ambedkar, found inspiration in the words of the Buddha and went on to shape the destiny of the nation. Following in their footsteps, we should strive to hear the call of the Buddha, to respond to his invitation to walk the noble path. The world seems full of suffering, in short term as well as in long term. There are many stories of kings and affluent people suffering from acute depression who took refuge in the Buddha to escape cruelties of life. Indeed, the life of the Buddha challenges earlier convictions as he believed in finding a deliverance from suffering in the midst of this imperfect world. Dear friends, today as the pandemic ravages human lives and economies across the globe, the Buddha's message serves like a beacon. He advised people to shun greed, hatred, violence, jealousy and many other vices to find happiness. Contrast this message with the hankering of an unrepentant mankind indulging in the same old violence and degradation of nature. We all know that the moment the virulence of coronavirus slows down, we have a far more serious challenge of climate change before us. Mahatma Gandhi, our father of the nation, knew that the Buddha offered a way out of our present predicament. In 1927, he told the students of the Anand College in Colombo, I quote, "The great master taught us what is known as the right path. And to learn the right path is not merely to pack our brains with many things that sound nice, good and sweet, but to do the right things." Gautam Buddha was so filled with mercy and kindness that it was he who taught us to love not only the members of the human family, but also to love all life, to love all the animal world. And he taught us also the personal purity of life, unquote. In the final phase of his life, the Buddha was acutely conscious of the fact that egotism, driven by envy, hatred, greed and ambition, would undermine compassion and loving kindness. The Buddha therefore encouraged the culture of dialectic and debate among his followers to arrive at their own truth. His cure for human suffering remains as relevant today as it was over 2.5 millennia ago. There is no doubt that the urgency of abiding by the values that the Buddha preached is eternal. By ignoring the soothing wisdom of every spiritual tradition, we have arrived at the juncture where we find ourselves today. It is high time we paid heed. Dear friends, I am grateful to the International Buddhist Confederation for providing me the opportunity to host this event and also to share my thoughts with you. The world has suffered much this year, and I sincerely wish that this sacred day heralds a new ray of hope and grants a glimpse of happiness. I also pray that it lights the lamp of wisdom in the heart of everyone. Atta Deepo Bhava. May we all be blessed. May we all awaken to wisdom. Thank you. Jai Hind.